The world needs more movies like Barbarian. Barbarian is a new horror thriller directed by Zach Cregger from the legendary sketch comedy group WKUK, or Whitest Kids You Know. You might recognize that group's name if, like me, you grew up in the early 2000s and at a certain point you got on YouTube and you and your friends found some hilarious sketch comedy videos that they really pushed the boundaries for the time.
Children, I'm afraid I have some very bad news. One of your mothers was just killed in a car accident. She'd been drinking.
And Zach Cregger was actually the writer and director of that whole series, WKUK. Anytime there's a comedy writer or director that attempts to make a thriller or a horror or really any other genre, I get really excited because comedy is just something that's really fucking hard to do. It's probably the hardest genre in general to get people to laugh at something that you think is funny, to get other people to think it's funny too. Like, that's just an amazing feat in and of itself. And so, spoilers ahead, because I want to actually talk about this movie somewhat in depth, and that's going to be impossible to do without spoiling things, so be warned. It's been a few days and I just can't stop thinking about it, so let's just dive in and talk about some of the things that stood out to me, what I liked, and why I think you guys should go watch it. Barbarian is genuinely unlike any horror movie I've seen this year in the way that the story never ceases to reinvent itself, constantly unraveling into something weirder, darker, and deeper, literally and metaphorically. What starts as a straightforward but still undeniably terrifying Airbnb gone wrong thriller quickly shifts into a demonic, morally challenging horror film that plays with character tropes and tonal shifts in a way that I've never seen before. But I don't really watch a lot of horror, so this is a horror review coming from the guy whose favorite movie of last year was The Worst Person in the World, so I'm not like super tapped into the mainstream horror or anything like that, but I'm just really impressed with Zach Cregger. All I really know him for are those skits that I talked about, but he continuously subverted my expectations and took me on a wild ride that I had a great time with. Every time I said to myself, like, dude, this is it. It can't get any fucking crazier than this. It just does. Most of our theater was laughing during the second half of the movie, in part due to the clever and comical writing, but mainly because we were just that uncomfortable and no other reaction seemed appropriate. It was like laughing in complete terror. It's just so absurd and unexpected at every turn that you just can't help but laugh. On a technical level, everything here is fantastic, but what really stood out to me was the beautiful cinematography and the unique shots. There are two that come to mind right off the bat, one of them being there was this one extended sequence where it went back in time, I think to the 70s. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was the 70s or 80s. There's this extended sequence where it follows this man who plays a role in the origin of the Barbarian. It follows him through this supermarket, and the whole time it has this fixed point on the back of his head that's kind of like the focus of the camera. It's some sort of stabilization or like fixed point focus where the camera can move slightly, but it's always going to have his head in the dead center of the screen, and something about that was just very unsettling to me. And there's also this other shot where it's like a first person POV, like GoPro-esque shot where AJ, the main douchebag of the movie, is kind of in like a standoff with the Barbarian, and it just worked for me. It was just unique, and I immediately acknowledged like, oh, that's a different shot, but it just put me in his perspective, and I was terrified. Since I went into the movie blind, for quite a while, I didn't realize there was a whole nother layer to the movie outside of girl goes to Airbnb and random weird guy is already in her Airbnb. So for the first like 15-20 minutes, I'm just invested in that story alone. Like, I'm already terrified for her because there's this creepy, unsettling guy that is kind of nice, but he's also potentially predatory and dangerous, and you don't know what to believe. And for the first 20 to 30 minutes, I would flip-flop back and forth between this guy is definitely plotting something, and he probably staked out her Airbnb ahead of time. He probably like knows all this information about her, and he got inside, and now he's playing it off as this nice guy. But then there'd be other moments where I'm like, wait, he's literally just an innocent dude. He's just a nice guy. And I really loved the nuance there that I wasn't really sure how to feel about him. And then you're just smacked in the face when they go deeper and uncover something. And now the whole focus of the movie is totally shifted away from this guy because we now realize like This guy's not a fucking problem. The Barbarian is the problem here. But that's just one example of the film reinventing itself, because it does it again at about the halfway point. The movie cuts to black, and I honestly almost thought the movie was over. I was like, that was a particularly short movie and it felt a little unresolved, but I enjoyed it. And then when it comes back for the whole second half of the movie, it focuses on a totally different character in a different state. And suddenly you're thrust into witnessing this douchebag of a man try to keep his life together while it's falling apart because of all the horrible things he's done. And you know the whole time that it's somehow going to connect to the main storyline and you're not sure quite how. And I could totally understand if some people didn't enjoy that disconnect there, because it is a little weird and jarring to start following this new character for the second half of the movie who you're supposed to hate, and it's actually hilarious how they kind of play into that. But for me, it really worked, and the tonal shift from just like thriller horror to kind of comedic and self-aware in some ways, I found that to be really fun. In terms of themes, I really did enjoy how well Zach Cregger was able to portray just the utter bullshit and fear that women have to deal with on a daily basis. Now, obviously, the women out there who watch this movie will have their own perspective on it, and I obviously can't speak to those themes from a personal experience, but I just think the film did such a great job of depicting how much she has to defend herself and protect herself, and the people who are supposedly supposed to be there to help her and defend her, like the police, just don't give a shit or don't trust her, and it's infuriating. It really is. The main character, Tess, has this line where she's like, I'm not a crackhead, I'm not a crazy person, I'm a prisoner and I need your help, and there are literally people over here and we can like save them, and the cops just don't listen to her, and it's fucked. I think it has a lot to say about some of the cities and dangerous communities around the country that are overwhelmed by crime, and you know, although this is fictionalized, there probably are a lot of scenarios like this that go unaddressed because there's other crimes happening all over the city. I just really love how they crafted Tess as a character, because her character is a documentary researcher, and so she really gets to use her analytical knowledge and research skills to kind of craft a plan on not only how to escape, but how to go back and save AJ, who she really has no reason to save. AJ's character is such a horrible human that Tess has every reason and every justification to leave him in the dust, save herself, and just let him face the consequences, because ultimately he deserves it. But instead, they write her as this character that is just the bigger person and genuinely puts her life on the line to go save this piece of shit. The ending took a turn that I genuinely did not expect, but as soon as the credits rolled, I sat back and I just smiled, because I was like, damn, this is one of the most unique horror films I've seen in a very long time. I believe the world needs more films like Barbarian. We need more ambitious, unimaginable, and genuinely out-of-the-box insane concepts that come directly from the artist's brain. In a world where big studios have been pumping out films in a formula that is relatively safe and financially successful, I think a lot of people are starting to notice, whether that be consciously or subconsciously, how unoriginal or uninspired some films feel. And thankfully, for our sake, I believe movies like Barbarian and this renaissance of fresh thriller horrors from directors that have a unique story to tell will be the foundation of the revival of cinema in America. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to drop a like, leave a comment, letting me know what you thought of Barbarian. Go watch it if you haven't seen it yet, and I'll see you guys next week.